Let's react to another video on ancient Egypt and let's see what these people have to say about it again, because these are the same people as last time.
Hi, I'm Egyptoe. A question that comes up a lot is, were the ancient Egyptians black Africans? The truth is, we need to look at this issue from two angles: physical features and archaeological evidence.
From those features alone, you'd have to conclude that they were black, because they do look black from those alone.
First, if we look at the art of the ancient Egyptians themselves, we'll notice that they were very precise in distinguishing the peoples around them.
Okay, bad start, because of course this is an interpretation, and in this interpretation we can see different interpretations in Egypt, or different drawings in Egypt that would completely go against this type of form. If you believe this is 100% what the people of ancient Egypt saw about these people, then you are sadly mistaken. For example, if you look at this image, you can see four Nubians at the front, and then you can see four Libyans at the back, and you can see how light skin or dark skin the the Libyans are compared to that previous drawing. And it's not that they never draw Libyans as light skinned as ever, but the point is that there are plenty more dark skinned Libyan drawings than there are light skinned Libyan drawings. There are plenty more dark skinned Libyan drawings than there are light skinned Libyan drawings. And then, of course, the Nubians generally have a very similar skin color to that of the ancient Egyptians. I mean, you can see in this image that they're pretty dark. They're not as dark as the Nubians are, but they're pretty dark. And of course, this is partially because of a way of life, which is a little bit different between the Nubians and the Egyptians. Also, this is the image of the nine bows. You can only see a few of them here, but you can see that the ancient Egyptians actually show that it's obvious that one of the things that you can make a big separation between themselves and other tribes, and you even see it in the depiction that you provided, is that they don't have a beard, whereas these guys definitely have a beard. But even if we take your image seriously, this specific image, we still end up with something very different than what you're talking about. Most people in Egypt today look the same as people in the Middle East. I've talked about this before. If you take somebody from the Middle East and you drop them in North Africa, it's going to be very difficult to tell the difference between the two of them. But if you can see in this image, there's a clear difference between the Middle Easterner, who is the guy who's standing right behind the Egyptian, and the Egyptian. In fact, the Egyptian looks like a middle or a cross mixed person between the Nubian and the Middle Eastern person. Which, I mean, I know you guys wouldn't want that because that would make them a black person. Take, for example, the Egyptian football team and compare their skin color with any of the people in this image. Do they really resemble the Egyptian if you look at their color? And these are just random people who play soccer, so they're outdoors all the time. But of course, using one image is not good enough. I mean, I know in ancient Egypt, they like to use one specific image. But if we look at modern Egyptians from the point of view of today versus the old ones, you can see that generally you would put them in the same perspective as the Asiatic. I mean, most of them, because of a quote unquote deep tan, have a somewhat pale, still pale skin color. It comes nowhere near what the ancient Egyptian would come through as. I mean, that damn near looks like a tanned Khoisan person. And again, a random assortment of Egyptians. And remember, Egyptians, just like most Arabs, can grow beards very, very fast. They've got hair all over their body, which is normal inside of these places. You would expect that to become the case. It's nothing good or bad. It's just a thing that happens Whereas obviously in Africa, people generally, and you can tell because the Nubian and the Egyptian don't have beards. I mean, the Egyptian has like a little small thing, but they don't really have beards. Whereas in Egypt, they have beard. Like almost everything that is typical within the Middle East is typical within Egypt. And these are not carefully selected images. You saw that one of them, when they were praying, looked precisely dark, but it still was because they were indoors. And I tried not to pick just prayer videos or anything like that, just pick real normal people. Now, I must specify, I have nothing against modern Egyptians. I think that Egypt is actually one of the better countries in Africa. If you don't just go for the pyramids, and you're probably going to have a good time in Egypt today.
Egyptians painted themselves with reddish-brown skin tones, which matches the population of the Nile Valley.
It may seem like what she's saying makes a lot of sense, but it doesn't, because actually the reddish brown in Egypt is actually very brown. Now, of course, there's images where they paint the females as yellow, and in some cases they paint some of the males that way, which probably indicates foreignness. But what they will never show you is that most of them are painted as actually extremely brown. Even when they're painted in light skin colors, they still come across as very brown in color. Think about the difference between this layer of brown and this layer of brown. All of these people still come across as extremely dark. Now, the important thing about this queen is that she gave birth to many different people in the layers of Egypt going on forward, on and on and on and on. And so, someone this dark in the history of Egypt, who is an exception but is not the only one, is part of the ruling class of the ancient Egyptians. Now, some people, they don't want to acknowledge this type of person, and they don't want to acknowledge a lot of type of people. What I've seen them acknowledge is the red hair that you see in some of these, instead of looking at it like that's dye, or looking at it like that's like paint falling off. What they do is they go, oh, there were some redheads in Egypt, which makes no sense. But then they see someone this black and they go, oh, it's an exaggeration. No, this is real skin color. And you can see with her hair that this person matches that. It has nothing to do with trying to portray something symbolically. No, this is what the person looked like. And a lot of Egyptians are just a tad bit lighter than this. They're brown in their skin color. I mean, I know they use the word red because that's the color they use to paint, but the color is clearly brown. And you can see again with the horse that is portrayed in Ramses's case, where the horse is portrayed in the same color as the man, as the Egyptian man. So clearly, they're that red is resembling a brown color, which of course they like to go it's tan. But is a horse tan? Is a horse not tan? Is a horse tanned? Is a horse burnt by the sun, or is it just brown? This is the deception that is being put on. Now, of course, this person said we go by physical characteristics, so that's 0-1.
At the same time, when they depicted Nubians or Kushites, they showed them with very dark skin, curly hair, and distinct African features.
Again, this is carefully selected images. And yes, it's true, they depict them that way in times of war. But in times of peace, they start to depict them with varying colors. In fact, you can see the same brown that is used for the ancient Egyptians is used with Nubians. And you can see that they can change dramatically in skin color from extremely black to mid-tone brown and all of that. And so this idea that they always portray them as like super dark, that is not a thing. And you can see that some of them damn near look like Egyptians. Some of them you can't even tell. It's like, okay, are they depicting an Egyptian or are they depicting a Nubian? How do we know? The only thing that we do know is that judging by some of the styles and hair, you can tell that these people have extremely Nubian hairstyles and stuff like that. So that's how you can kind of tell. But if you want to believe that somehow Nubians were these extremely dark people, I mean, it's easy. You could just go look at Sudan and ask yourself, is everybody in Sudan extremely dark? Because that would mean the ancient Egyptians used to be blind. Now, of course, if we're looking at Sudanese people, we're looking at people who vary from dark skin, and you can see that some of them come across as lighter skin, and then some of them come across as like jet black. And the jet black, in my opinion, is better than the light skin. But the lighter skin version of them is not something that is so unique that it should be thrown away as like, ah, oh, that never happens. By the way, I understand why some people want to take away the South Sudanese from Egypt, which is impossible. The reason, of course, being that they are the highest competitors to be genetically related to the ancient Egyptians. And so trying to show as if like the ancient Egyptians always wanted to put them in handcuffs for some reason is one of the funniest things ever, when we clearly have Egyptian depictions of Sudan, and we have temples made by Egyptians in Sudan, made by Egyptians, not made specifically by Sudanese, made by Egyptians in Sudan. We know that they saw that place as, their backyard. They saw it as another part of Egypt.
Libyans, on the other hand, were shown with lighter complexions and even blonde or light brown hair.
So, first of all, Libyans today look like Egyptians today. So, saying that there's a complete difference in the way they portray themselves is crazy. And then, secondly, we can see by this depiction how dark skinned Libyans actually were portrayed. And you can see they still have the same lock and everything. Now, were there some who were probably light skinned? I don't doubt it, because I've actually read that a few of them came from the Middle East in the depiction of, well, we'll talk about it another time, but it's a very small amount of people. And so it doesn't phase me. It doesn't even go against what I believe that a few of them, especially those close to Libya, because they had direct trade with Asia, would have had a few people who were light skinned, which might have been portrayed by the ancient Egyptians as well in the images that she provided. I'm not even denying that. Like, who's gonna say that never happened? But this idea that all Libyans were these pale skinned people is ridiculous. We know that Libyans that have changed dramatically. Also, we know that Libyans were connected to the Kanem Bornu Empire, which had black people, and was depicted in the later years, like even in 13, 1400s, 1500s, as large amounts of Libyans were black. Now, you might ask yourself the question, why are they comfortable with Libyans being pale skinned, comfortable with Middle Eastern people being light skinned? But then when it comes to the Egyptians, they say, no, we're darker skinned than all of these people. Why do they do that? Well, the answer is because they're trying to fit into the ancient Egyptians. They can tell that they're light skinned. They know this. Not only do they know it, they love that they're light skinned in Egypt. They do that. They portray those people on TV. They have that. Everybody knows that there's discrimination in Egypt where light skin is highly favored. So why is it that when light skin is highly favored on TV, they then have to be like, no, we're the darkest Middle Eastern people? Where do they get that idea from? Why does it come through in that? And again, it's just to fit in to the ancient Egyptians, because if they accept that they're light skinned like everybody else in the Middle East, they have completely run away from the ancient Egyptians, and they will have nothing to do with the population. By the way, this is not me carefully selecting images, and this is how they portray themselves. This is what Egyptians see when they look at other Egyptians. They don't see the dark skin farmer Egyptian, tan, all of that they try to portray when they suddenly try to depict themselves as the Egyptians. But in real life, they see a typical Middle Eastern slash Arab type of people, and the way they see themselves is light skin. Like I said, if you take these people and you put them in a lot of places in the world, you can guess a lot of places, but Egypt is not going to be the place here that you're going to guess. As like, I mean, you could throw them in America, and they could fit in with some of the light skinned Americans. You could put them in Europe, and they look European. You can put them in the Middle East; they kind of look Middle Eastern. You can put them in a lot of places, but the way they depict themselves, eh, eh. Come on, guys, come on. It's so easy to see what is going on here. And like, oh no, we've got this deep diversity. Let's see it in your movies. If you guys are so proud of your dark skin because it's so different than that of the Middle East and that of the rest of the other people, then let's see you portray that. Where are all these light skinned people coming from? And again, it's not me picking on anybody. Look at this image. This image is the one they provided: a brown skinned Egyptian person and two light skinned people, which they claim of one is from Libya and one is from Asia. And I agree that Asia, that's what people look like. I've said this before. A lot of people don't know that people in the Middle East are pretty light skinned. That's something that a lot of people don't realize. Even the Egyptians I just showed you, you see how light skinned those people are. People, they don't go, oh no, that Middle Eastern guy, he's way too light skinned. That's not how the Middle Eastern people. Middle Eastern light skinned are very light skinned, with the exception of a few people who, a lot of them are actually mixed. People don't realize that a lot of them mix, and they're not necessarily mixed with just black Africans. Some of them mixed with Bedouins. Bedouins tend to be dark skinned because they're a equatorial people. And there's high levels of Indo-Europeans in both modern Egyptians and Middle Eastern people, which, by the way, Indo-European DNA, which is typical in both of these populations, was not typical in ancient Egypt. This Indo-European DNA only came in the last, in the last 3,000 years in those areas. That's why it's funny when they say our population is still exactly the same. What do you mean? There's been an extension of Indo-European DNA in those places, meaning that people now in Egypt can get extremely light skin hair as opposed to the past where in Egypt, oh my God. Let's go back to some of these images because that's the part that actually surprises me. In Egypt, they never portray their hair as anything outside of black. But the Egyptians can vary from brown hair, dark hair, sometimes blonde, very rare. I mean, I know a lot of people like to go, oh, we got such diversity. No, the blonde hair is very rare in Egypt. Most of them have black hair, and then they have brown hair, and then they have dark brown and things like that. The one that's very hilarious is blue eyes. Like the ancient Egyptians wouldn't be super portraying that if they had it. Like they act like, oh, ancient Egyptians, they would have missed that point. The fact that modern Egyptians, some of them have blue eyes, which, by the way, because of modern everything, you can find some of these traits in some of the weirdest places. You can find them in South America. Someone will be dark as hell and with blue eyes. Go to America, forget South America. African Americans. Some African Americans have blue eyes. Some African American hair is straight, and they're dark skinned. In fact, I'll say it again. This image specifically, I mean, you could say that this is like from India. I mean, you could guess so many places.
This makes it clear that the Egyptians saw themselves as distinct from their southern African neighbors. Let's discuss other proofs and reasons. The mummies discovered by archaeologists reveal characteristic features.
This argument is quite possibly the worst one that they've ever come up with. You can't get features from a mummy. I'm sorry. Maybe if you scan it and then you put it in, but just by looking at it, you can't get features from a mummy. These things are edited while they're still alive so that these people can continue to look a specific way. And half the things they put in, natural things, they don't put in cement or something to make half of them. The things that they put in to keep the nose shape, to keep the cheeks, to keep all of that, they degrade over time. And then these people have a face. We go, oh, this face is so specific. It's not specific to anything. These mummies' faces have been changed dramatically by years and years of degradation. I mean, you can see the hair is literally disappearing. There's no lips to speak of. I mean, these people, you can hardly get anything from this except when you do deep dives into the skull and go, okay, so the skull looks like this, and therefore the person must have looked like that. That you can do that, but everything else is just a waste of time. Now, of course, they're gonna do the thing of like, oh, look at the hair color, it's kind of reddish. I've shown you Native Americans, there's no blondes, there's no none of that. But if you go and look at some of the mummies in Native American history, they have brown, red, orange hair. This is due to the degradation, oxidization in the hair, changing the color. And it doesn't just change the color of the hair, it changes the things, the mummy wrap, the skin, all of that, because that's what's going to happen. I mean, if you know rust, then you know what color it takes. All of this is nonsense, but let's hear what they have to say. Oh, one more thing. You notice how in ancient Egypt you never see anyone with flowy hair? They're almost always portrayed with like braided or short hair. But then somehow the mummies always have this long, flowy hair. And you go, who had that hairstyle? I don't remember them portraying anybody with long, flowy hair in ancient Egypt. And then they go, okay, so why is the hair long? How could you explain that? Well, if we all agree that they used to braid their hair, imagine unbraiding braids or untaking dreadlocks and unraveling them. What do you think they're going to look like?
Straight or slightly curved noses, almond-shaped eyes, and medium-length skulls, features that differ from typically sub-Saharan African traits.
Okay, so there's this idea that Africans don't have straight noses, which I've seen in places like Nigeria and stuff. You can find in West Africa, you can find people in Africa who have straight noses. Believe it or not, you will find it if you look for it. The deeply set eyes, that's just dumb. Like, I don't even want to go into that one. The uh, 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 noses, the crooked noses. I don't even know what that means. And then they said like the sort of straight, like smaller face. I don't know where they're getting at. Firstly, all of these, by the way, can be seen in Ethiopians. They can be seen in North Sudanese. They can be seen in other versions of Africa. I mean, we in Central Africa, you can see several of people like this with these types of features. But you know, that then you'd have to believe in diversity in Africa, which Africa is one of the most diverse places in the world. But that's if you accept that that's what the mummies look like, which one of the mummies they showed is Ramses. So let's see if Ramses matches half of the things that they're talking about. No, it doesn't. So I guess that's over. You have to work on something else. I mean, the depiction that they give for Ramses from this is hilarious.
Modern genetic analysis has also shown that ancient Egyptians.
Now, I would hate to defame fellow Africans by saying that their little transition here is a little full of garbage. I mean, think about what they just did with this image. So they go, oh, ancient Egyptians used to look like that. This is what a modern Egyptian looks like. Do you see a little bit of a problem when you look at the modern Egyptians and how they see themselves and portray themselves versus these two images that they just showed? Which, by the way, the similarities are mild at best. These guys are trying their best to go, oh, look how dark they are. A little bit of a problem here. Which some of you might go, well, there are some Egyptians that are that dark. The problem is the Egyptians always colored themselves with this color. Not sometimes, always. Whereas modern Egyptians, almost always portray themselves with this light color. But then when it comes to Egypt, they find, I mean, let's do a vote here. Who thinks that this person right here would be considered top 10 looking Egyptians in Egypt? Who thinks that they would ever make it anywhere near television looking the way they do? These guys need to stop playing games. There is no reddish brown. There is no none of that. That is just a myth that they're making up now to fit into the ancient Egyptians. We all know that they look like white people today. They look like plain white people. That is why you can find plenty of Arabic books where they literally call themselves white people. Did you know that? Did you know that the people in Egypt used to call themselves white people? They used to call the Europeans red. They used to call themselves white, and then they used to call black people black. I mean, I am saying it as if it's like past tense, but they still consider themselves pretty white. And in fact, in some cases, some people who were on YouTube as well, they've been insulted when you say that they are part black, so therefore they're black. They're like, wait a minute now, don't exaggerate. Now, I want you to remember that they tested modern Egyptians, these pale skinned people, they've tested them and they found that a lot of them had higher levels of black DNA than quote unquote ancient Egyptian mummies that were tested. And still they come across as this.
Were more closely related to populations of North Africa and the Eastern Mediterranean.
Firstly, what the hell are these transitions? They're some of the worst that I've seen ever. These people look nothing alike. I mean, not to mention that they're completely different gender, their facial features, but you know, they both basically have a head, and then they have a mouth, a nose, two eyes, so identical, except one is darker skin, the other one is extremely pale. One has like dreadlock hair, and the other one has like straight hair. The other one's nose is much thinner than and much higher up. It's not crooked like the one that they're talking about in Egypt. The upper lip and the lower lip are more full than the one on the other side. But you know, there's a general resemblance in that they're both human.
Than to sub-Saharan Africa. And there's another very important.
I like now that they're being more honest though about what they portray as a real Egyptian. This is a real Egyptian. This is what they're actually portraying. That first image they showed looks nothing like it. It's like they're taking people who look nothing alike. I mean, even this girl in the previous one, they look nothing alike. And then they're going, look at the general form of the Egyptian. There's no general form. Everything you're showing is showing very wide diversity, which is usually a sign that the people are of a very mixed background, which is a sign of not being the same population forever.
Point. In recent years, scientists have managed to analyze the DNA of ancient Egyptian mummies, especially those found in Abu Sir el Melek, near Fayum.
Again, I'm proud of them for at least trying to use the light-skinned Egyptians, which depict the people who are really there. That dark-skinned version of it is embarrassing. Stop trying to pretend like those are the actual people that you guys see as the real Egyptians. If you want an honest debate, debate honestly. Don't do this thing of trying to pretend that the dark skin is what Egyptians see themselves today. And by the way, the third lie or the third thing that they rely on is DNA, which of course what she's mentioned is a 2017 study. Again, that's at Fayum, where foreigners generally are, and only a few of them were tested and came back with real results, and they still had sub-Saharan African DNA and all of that. So this depiction, again, this lie, this thing of, oh, we can't find African DNA and nope. No, 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 no. And then, of course, there's an increase of Indo-European DNA, which they don't want to talk about, because that's going to make you realize that some of the people who are being portrayed here are very different than the oldest people.
The results were striking. Their genetic profiles matched very closely with those of modern Egyptians. This proves there has been clear continuity between the ancient Egyptians and the people living in Egypt today.
I love how when they were talking about the physical characteristics, they were so like stamping their head on the desk, like, no, everybody else is light skin, the Nubians are dark skin, and then now all they're showing is like light skin, Arab looking Egyptians, and then trying to transition, like, oh, that's what they're portraying. Because now they've moved on to DNA, their focus is no longer on physical appearance. So they're like, oh, now we can bring back the Egyptians that we really look like, and then do that weird thing where apparently putting a picture over another and then making it more transparent makes the image. Let's try that, by the way. Oh, surprise, surprise. The ancient Egyptians were Japanese the entire time. We were all wrong. Believe it or not, the next claim is even worse than all the other claims that they were making this entire time. And of course, it's one that we've heard 100 times, but it feels more ridiculous every single time.
The population wasn't replaced or completely changed, as some claim. On the contrary, modern Egyptians are the natural descendants of their ancient ancestors.
When you say the population was not replaced, as some say, are those some the very same people who come from those populations, like, the Arabs that wrote about the transfer from the old Egyptians to the new? People like Al Masudi talking about the big change in Africa, including the Arabs holding captive to other nations in Africa, not just Egypt. Is that what we're talking about, or are we talking about something else? When we say others claim, it's not a claim, it's a fact. People got replaced. Egypt would be the only place on earth, by the way, in the last, let's say, 8,000 years, that have not had a transition of people in the world. There is no place in the world where there hasn't been a transition of human beings from one place to another. If the first people in Egypt are the same as the people today, then Egypt is the only exception on earth where this is true. The Bantus come from West Africa. The West Africans themselves come from Central Africa. The Central Africans come from North Africa and East Africa. In Europe, people have been traveling back and forth. The Vikings, all of these people been moving up and down. British, Indo-European. In Asia, you've got the Japanese, the Chinese, the Indians. All of these people migrating in different versions with the transition of farming. In the Polynesian areas, they migrated up and down Polynesia and the Oceania in general, even going to the Americas. In the Americas, you have the Americans moving from north to south, south to north. The only place, apparently, in the world where people have never migrated is in Egypt. This is the dumbest claim ever made by a human being.
With only minor genetic admixture over thousands of years due to limited migrations.
Oh, limited migration. Now it's no longer in a strategic position where it is easy for people to transition in and out. Now it's like limited. What is it, like 4,000 people? That one was so silly. You know that they say that. They say only 4,000 people in Egypt up until the 1900s came from elsewhere. Everybody else was native except 4,000 people.
DNA evidence shows that Egyptian identity has remained intact, and that the people we see in the mummies are a reflection of the same population that exists today.
Yet when they report that DNA, they say that those people are closely related to Middle Easterners. Isn't that what they say? That 2017 DNA is closely related to people in the Middle East. Is that not what they say? If it's some unique thing, then why is it being compared to the Middle East? It's not unique.
Now, here's a point many people overlook. Egyptians are not originally Arabs. Of course.
That's right. That's right. Modern Egyptians are not originally Arabs. That's why their land was conquered by Arabs. That's why the religion they follow is Arabic. They dress like Arabs. They look like Arabs. They live real close to Arabs. They speak Arabic. Hello? And some people are going to be like, yeah, but North Africans also speak Arabic, and are, they're the native population of North Africa. No, they're not the native population of North Africa, and they speak Arabic because they're Arabs and they claim to be Arabs. They say it. They say they come from Banu Salim and all these other groups from Arabia, but everybody else tries to fit them into the Berber population, which is not a fact. And then here's another thing. This is the scary part. When you ask, as if it's like a truth, why did they abandon their own language? They go, well, the Arabs forced them to speak Arabic. Actually, no. If you go and look at alchemy and stuff like that, the Arabs were trying to bring back the ancient Egyptian language. So it's not the Arabs who got rid of it, or the Greeks got rid of it. The Greeks were translating ancient Egyptian texts. They were not interested in getting rid of the ancient Egyptian language. So who got rid of the ancient Egyptian language? Who got rid of it? It just fell out of favor because the people who originally spoke it, the people who held it to a high regard, the people who thought that it was a very good language, the natives, became a minority in their own populations. And that's why people in Sudan who could still speak the ancient Egyptian language were called sometimes to Egypt to help translate them. You know,
Of course, the Arabic language and Islam became essential parts of Egyptian identity after the Islamic quest.
so after Muslims conquered Egypt, the Arab language became the leading language. How many people do you think it takes to make a language be the most popular language in that area? Let's take other parts in the world, for example. Like, how many people needed to speak English in America for that to become the language that dominates? How many people do they need to speak any language, really? I mean, if you take English itself, the reason why it's got its Germanic origins is because a lot of the people who spoke it in the beginning were Germanic. I mean, English has Germanic origin and roots, but why does it have a lot of Italian roots or Latin roots? Because there were a lot of people who were Latin. Why does it have roots from everywhere around the world? Oh, because of the British Empire. History bleeds in. But apparently in Egypt, everybody does not transition. Nobody changes. Everybody has always looked the same forever for a million years.
But ethnically and genetically, Egyptians have much older roots. When the Arabs entered Egypt in the 7th century AD, their numbers were not as large as some imagine. Historical sources suggest that their numbers did not exceed around 4,000.
This number is taken from an initial number of soldiers that attacked Egypt. So about 4,000 soldiers attacked Egypt in the beginning. And so they go, oh, there was only 4,000 people who came into Egypt, which is silly. They also brought slaves, they brought the general population, and not everyone who dominated was 100% a person from that era. Here's a word you'll have to familiarize yourself with: Sakilba or Sakaliba. And this word describes white slaves, European slaves, that were taken from Al Andalus, that were taken from Scandinavia, that were taken from all these places and sent to the Maghreb, Al Andalus, Egypt, the Middle East. Generally, they were sent to places where there are Arabs. And some of these included Viking born people. This, by the way, happened in a very large way in 700 AD. So, again, lies. By the way, to familiarize yourself with the information, um, Arabs didn't start slavery during the Islamic era. It was way before that. And they were taking Europeans, Black Africans, and even Bedouins as slaves in the Middle East. So, this idea that it's like, oh, they just came 4,000. Really? So they forgot their own tradition of slavery?
At the same time, Egypt's population was about 4 to 5 million. In other words, the Arab presence was very small compared to the Egyptian population.
Okay, so here's another thing. The Arabs didn't take Egypt from native Egyptians, they took them from the Romans. The Romans had already taken over the place for a good hundreds of years, really. And after these hundred, which by the way, they still make the claim that like 30 people were Roman or something, like 100 people were Roman. Everybody else was native, except when you go and read the Roman writings, the Greek writings, it seems like there's way more than that of trends who came into that era. In fact, there's uh, a sarcastic, or I forgot what they call them, but these people, writers, who write about the transition that people were moving to Rome in droves and moving from Egypt to Rome and Rome to Egypt in large numbers, to the point where he started complaining about the skin color change in those eras. He even says that um the skin of the Romans became lighter because of Gauls in France. Tired of all these lies, bro.
Yes, intermixing did happen, but its effect was very limited compared to the size of the Egyptian population that continued largely unchanged.
By the way, 4 million is not that large a number that the people could not change ever. Sudan, not South Sudan, had much more than 4 million people, and their population still changed. Today, they are mixed with Arabs to the point that even the dark skinned people don't call themselves dark skinned black people, they call themselves Arabs. So 4 million is not that great a number.
Genetic studies also confirm this. Modern Egyptians' DNA is still very close to that of the ancient Egyptians, with only a small proportion of Arab genetic influence.
The only way I can respond to that is just by saying this person's making that part up. You see, the only way they go around this in Egyptology is to say that even though the genetics is the same as modern Arabs, the thing is that the Arab DNA is still seen in earlier times in Egypt. That's how they get around it. They don't get around it by pretending that there's no Arab DNA in modern people.
And of course, the question of are Egyptians Arabs or not is a big one, and we'll make a separate video to go deeper into it with history and facts. In the end, we need to understand that Egyptians are not a small tribe with one fixed appearance.
Before I address any of what she said later, this transition is diabolical. This is ridiculous. So basically, they don't even start with the original one. You can see already that they've already transitioned it at the bottom, but the person looks too African, so they're like, no, 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 let's just pick a strange looking Egyptian, which looks nothing like the statue, by the way. But to address what she just said, oh yeah, there are many tribes. Yes, there are many tribes from many different parts of the world. That's what Egyptians are today. They're people from all parts of the world coming together into this one location under a culture of array of Arabs, and they were claiming to be Arabs forever. There's even, oh my god, there's even people as early as like 500 AD talking about Arabs coming into Egypt, and they're a much larger population than the 4,000 you're talking about.
They are a people, and peoples are naturally diverse. That's why among Egyptians you can find blonde hair with blue eyes, fair skin with hazel eyes, and darker skin with black eyes and a beautiful smile. Egypt is diverse in everything: its nature, its culture, and even the features of its people.
Multicolored hair, mass diversity to the point where you get blonde and blue eyes, things that did not exist in ancient Egypt ever until later. In fact, they didn't even exist in Europe until later. So why would we say that these people are one tribe again? On what planet does that sound like one tribe? That sounds like the perfect definition for a multiple of people.
And this diversity is not new. It goes back to the days of ancient Egyptian civilization. If we look at the reliefs and statues, we can clearly see this variety. as if the ancient Egyptians were fully aware that they were representing a wide and diverse people.
So earlier, you said all the ancient Egyptians were depicted as reddish brown. Now they're depicting a group of people that are mixed. Come on, at least pick a side. Don't do this one right here. This one is dumb. Oh, it's as if they were depicting a multiple. Nah, shut up. That is not that. This is why I say it's always important to understand what mixed race means, because I will take that at some point you could say that there was a slight amount of Middle East and a slight amount of black people which came together and formed ancient Egyptians, which were brownish skin, and that's why you could find DNA of Middle Eastern people. But these guys would still look like black people at the end of the day, but they would have some Middle Eastern DNA. I will accept that as a real interpretation of the multi-culture of ancient Egypt, but I will not accept this. This is nonsense.
This diversity is exactly what makes people all over the world today want to claim Egyptian civilization as their own.
But if ancient Egypt was diverse, then they'd be right to try and claim it, not as their own, but it would be a world thing, right? Because it wouldn't belong to one place if it was diverse. How can you say it's diverse, but then it only belongs to one people? That doesn't make sense. That's like saying America is diverse, but then it only belongs to one race. No, diverse means it belongs to a lot of different people.
Because everyone can see a part of themselves in it. But the truth remains the same. This civilization belongs to the Egyptians, and only the Egyptians. And in the end, the diversity of Egyptian features is no coincidence.
How can she just say it? The diversity is not a coincidence. Diversity. Multiple people coming in. The modern Egyptians are diverse, not a coincidence. I mean, even ancient ones at some point would have been a little bit diverse because of the Persians and all these other people coming in. But at least these ones were diverse. The modern ones are 100% diverse because multiple people.
It reflects a bigger truth. Egypt is not just a country. Egypt is the mother of the world. A mother that gathers her children with all the different colors and features from the time of the pharaohs until today. And that is the true secret of Egyptian civilization. It resembles the whole world, but the whole world will never resemble it.
Okay, so that was the biggest rambling, full of contradictions. Everything the person was saying made no sense. And at least some people, they're actually being honest about the fact that they actually believe that the ancient Egyptians were part of the old civilization, and they try to show consistent evidence. This person is going back and forth between ideas, going, they were not diverse, they are diverse. They did not have Middle Eastern people. They do have Middle Eastern people. They do not have. It's no. It's all over the place. And then, of course, if we go look at just straight up forward evidence, we can see that all of this is nonsense. And yes, Arabs did replace the native population, as they did in many places, and they were proud of that. By the way, another influx that they never talk about are the Ottomans who came in later. Thank you for watching. Like, share, subscribe. Don't forget to yeah, do that. Become a member, donate, vote for whatever parties in your country is good, whatever.